Meanwhile, miles downstream, which seemed a spattering of fire, now amplified into a dull, continued roar. Grant, nursing a painful, swollen, acquired 2 days earlier in a horseback accident, noted, "While I was at breakfast, heavy firing was heard in the direction of Pittsburgh Landing, and I sent a hurried note to Buell informing him of the reason why I could not meet Savannah. On the way up the river, I directed the dispatch boat to run in close to Crump's Landing so that I could communicate with General Voss. Found him waiting on him, apparently expecting to see me, and I directed him to get his troops in line, ready to execute any orders he might receive. Replied that the troops were already under arms, prepared. By the time Grant arrived on the field, he found his army pressed all along its front, some 2 miles. Some men had broken. Some had left the battlefield, sought the security of bluffs along the river. For the now full-blown battle special war correspondent Junius Henry Brown of the New York Tribune wrote, "Hotter and hotter grew the contest. Light as the sun was obscured by the clouds of sulfur and smoke. The ground became moist and slippery and humid. Men glared at each other as at wild beasts, and when a shell burst with fatal effect among a crowd of the advancing foe, and arms, legs, and heads were torn off, a grim smile of pleasure lighted up the smoke-begrimed faces of the transformed witness catastrophe. Men with knitted brows and flushed cheeks fought madly over bridges, along ravines, up steep ascents with blood and perspiration streaming down their faces. Everywhere was mad excitement, everywhere was horror. Commanders galloped wildly in front of their regiments and cheered them on, urging spirited steeds wherever the troops were falling back, careless of moonlight, as if they had a million souls to spare. Those surprised men from Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois, men with musket and artillery fire, slowed and made a stand. They stopped the initial advance and forced the Confederates to fall back with heavy losses. That scenario would be repeated all day. Confederate attacks came, but they were thrown in. What success those attacks did have actually created an advantage. Southern attacks on both flanks of the Union force compressed the line. The Federal line was bent back on both its center increased in depth and number and refused to give way. The vortex of the fighting ran 6th and under Benjamin Prentiss and elements of the 2nd and 4th Divisions. Some 4,000 survivors hunkered down in a 1/2 mile long so-called sunken road made a stand. Somewhere in the midst of that lead-laced hell, Colonel Isaac C. Hughes, the 41st Illinois Fellows, and fill your canteen. Some of you hell before night. Grant recapped the crisis, told how fortunate in his army was. Good fortune praised one of his division commanders. It was a case of Southern dash against Northern pluck and endurance. I was continuously engaged, passing from one part of the field to another, giving directions to division commanders, thus moving along the line. However, I never deemed it important to stay long with Sherman. He inspired a confidence in officers and men that enabled them to render services on that bloody battlefield worthy of best competitors. Casualty of Sherman that would have taken from the field that day would have been a sad one. Gage Shiloh. How near we came. Sherman was shot twice, once in the hand, once in the shoulder, all cutting his coat and taking life wound, and a third ball passed through the hat. In addition to this, had several horses shot during the day. Fighting in this general area was so desperate that it would forever be known as the Hornet. Bleedings, electric chaos. A wounded Union soldier was told to go to the rear. He did, but me a gun, Captain. This fight ain't got no all around the universe confusion. Many of these men, north and south, volunteered in 1881 expecting to wrestle glory. There was little glory that year. Here, for fearful snapshots, they would rest their lives. Attesting to the hail of lead, one federal was found. He had been shot 7 times. Grant's 2nd Division Commander W.H.L. Wallace, wife on the way, horribly wounded. A bullet struck him behind his left, exited out his left eye socket. A Union drummer boy of the 1830, in great pain, intestine protruding. Federal chaplain in the boy's intestine back inside. Told him to have faith in the Lord, then left him. One unnamed Union captain recalled this unforgettable. I saw an intelligent looking man, whole dyingly went on. He was holding up near all of his both hands. Face expressed a longing, an apprehension, certain fatality. After our regiment had nearly annihilated and we were compelled to retreat under a galling fire, saw a boy supporting his dying brother on an arm, trying to drag him to the field and advancing Confederates. He looked at me imploringly and said, "Captain, help him, won't you? Do, Captain, he'll live." I said, "Shot through the dying now." "Oh, no, he ain't, Captain. Don't leave me." I was forced to reply, "Rebels won't hurt him. Lay him down and come, or both you and I lost." Then the rush of bullets, yells of approaching, and hurried me away, leaving the young soldier, dying brother. Earlier I mentioned Confederate hill attacks. This portion of the battlefield, Union Center, a sunken road, and Hornets. Some 18,000 Confederates made 10 documented charges throughout the day, but never more than 3,700 back. Charging across open fields allowed unobstructed federal fire, and one area that did offer some cover, so thick it broke up Confederate formations. That's why 4,300 soldiers, various commands, hunkered down behind a slightly sunken road, broke wave after wave packs. Here, the assessment of Bragg's chief engineer, Colonel Samuel H. Lockett. I witnessed the various bloody and unsuccessful attacks on the Hornets. During one of the dreadful repulses, our forces, General Bragg directed me to ride forward. Central regiment, a brigade of troops that was recoiling across an open field, and to take its colors and carry them forward. The flag must not go back again. He dashed through the line of battle, seized the colors from the retreating color bearer, and said to him, "General Bragg says these colors must not go to the rear." While I was talking to him, the color sergeant shot down. A moment or two afterward, I was almost alone on horseback in the open field between the two lines of battle. An officer, Colonel H.W. Allen, later to become governor of Louisiana, came up to me with a bullet hole in each cheek, blood streaming out, and asked, "What are you doing with my colors, sir?" "I am obeying General Bragg's orders to hold them where they are. Let me have them. Any man but my color bearer carries these colors. I am the man. But tell General Bragg I will see the colors are in the right place. Must attack this position in flank. Never carry it alone from the front." The stubbornness of the Federal center even compelled the Confederate commander to arrive on the scene. Albert Sidney Johnston rode dangerously forward. For the 9th Arkansas and 45th Tennessee, he, with pen cup in hand, attacked soldiers' bayonets and calmly marked, "These will do. They are stubborn, must use the bayonet." Then he moved to the center of their battle line and caught up his opponent, exclaimed, "I will lead you." Incredible. Commanding officer of the Confederate Army of the Mississippi led an attack on horseback, albeit unsuccessful. Turned believing he had made the effort without consequence. And that would not be. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Johnston aide noted with great concern. General now had grown pale, reeling in the saddle. Right, "General, are you wounded?" Johnston replied, "Yes, and I fear seriously." Hit just above the hollow of his right knee, a major artery severed. So much blood that spilled blood. Paul went out to find his personal surgeon, Dr. D.W. Andell, but he was away attending to Union. All that was required was a tourniquet. No one on the scene knew what to do. So, at about 2:30 on the afternoon, April the 6th, 1802, commander of the Confederate Army, Albert Sidney Johnston, bled to death on the battle. Page now tried to locate G.T. Warren, now in command, and who had recently been suffering from a throat infection, also from bronchitis. It took time to locate him. He had been in the rear, funneling in units. While men searched for him, Confederate attacks continued to unsuccessfully hammer the stubborn Federal center. Then, about 4:30 p.m., 52-year-old Confederate Brigadier General Daniel Ruggles, interestingly a Massachusetts native, called for positioning 62 cannons, 62 guns that spanned 1/5 of a mile. Then, largest concentration of artillery in the history of the Western. They opened up, they filled the air in front of the sunken road with lethal lead. After the barrage, it was now time for Confederate infantry, adding Colonel George E. Ames, 1st, 9th, and 19th Tennessee. In the middle of a Confederate 3-brigade front, and specifically with the 1st Tennessee on left, 9th Tennessee in center, and 19th Tennessee on the right, they moved shoulder to shoulder, out into the Peach Orchard, headed for Colonel Isaac Pugh's Union line, which was defended by the 3rd Iowa and Illinois. As they did, the air was filled with sulfur and black powder smoke, much so that both lines could not clearly see the other. Gainey ordered his men to the ground, found the enemy from their muzzle flashes, waited for them to fire a volley, then ordered his men feet and forward. He took losses, but tore into Pugh's in line, and with its right threatened, Pugh's men had to fall back, as did that section of the Union defensive line. That, along with Confederate attacks on the other Union flank, its right, meant that around 5:30 in that afternoon, the stubborn Union center was surrounded. Finally, after hours of determined defense, Benjamin Prentiss surrendered some 2,200 of his command. For the Confederates, the costly victory bragged Colonel S.H. Lockett noted. It was a dear triumph for us, here for the many soldiers lost in the first fruitless attacks, but still dearer on account valuable time it cost me day after week. The time consumed in gathering Prentiss's command together, taking the arms, and marching the rear was incredibly valuable. Not only that, news of capture spread and grew as its. Many soldiers and officers believed we had captured the bulk of the Federal Army. Hundreds left their positions, came to see the captured Yanks. With little sunlight left, Beauregard, around 6 p.m., suspended Confederate activity for the day. It had been a bloody one. Whitelaw Reid, reporter from the Cincinnati Gazette, says today, "We have lost nearly all our camp equipage, lost nearly half our field artillery. We've lost a division general and 2 or 3 regiments of soldiers and prisoners. We've lost dreadfully, killed, hospitals full, flowing, and our men are discouraged by prolonged heat. Nothing but the most energetic exertion on the part of the officers prevents them from becoming demoralized." There was one Union officer who was not demoralized. That was U.S. Grant. The rear at the landing put together a formidable last stand. That evening, across the way, flushed with what he truly believed in incredible, costly success, Beauregard sent a victory telegram to Richmond, then bedded down Sherman's left the night before. However, few happening back at the landing would have been unable. One exhausted soldier who was near the river, Private Leander Stillwell, 61st Illinois, noted, "As we were lying there, I heard the strains of martial music, saw a body of men marching up the road. I slipped out of rank, walked out to the side of the road to see what troops there were. The band was playing Dixieland. The men were marching in quick step. I saw that they had not been in a fight, for there was no powders upon their faces. What regiment is this?" asked the young sergeant marching blank. Back came the answer in quick, cheery tones. "The 36th Indiana, advance guard of Buell's army." Gave one big gasping swallow, for the blood pumped in the veins of my throat and my heart fairly pounded against my little infantry jacket in the joyous rapture of this glorious intelligence. Indeed, around 5 to 6 p.m., about the time Benjamin Prentiss surrendered his force in the Union Center, Don Carlos Buell's 5,000-man army of the Ohio began to arrive across the river to the West Bank. Timing of its arrival not have been better. Night brought to a close. It had been a most unholy Sabbath. Union Colonel Will Nahat noted. The Sabbath closed on a scene which had no parallel on the Western front. Night fell upon, spread imperial fall all over. Filled with blood, with death, held unrestrained carnival. Soon after dark, the rain descended in torrents. All through the dreary hours of that dismal night, it rained unceasing. From the sky, solemn thunder, gunboats out in the river. They threw heavy missiles toward the Confederate line, came swelling at intervals high above the pelting hills. But William Sherman, whose division had been one of the first overrun, was lucky to be alive. In addition to having 3 horses shot out from under him, Grant had noted earlier he had been shot through the palm of his right hand, suffered another slight wound in the shoulder. At night it rained most terribly, finding Grant in the driving deluge that fell that night. Sherman quipped, "We've had the devil's own day, haven't we?" Grant answered, "Yes, lick 'em tomorrow." Though optimistic, the Union commander had most miserable fight. I made my headquarters under a tree 100 yards back from the riverbank. My ankle was so much swollen, bruised, so painful, I could get no rest. The drenching rain would have precluded the possibility of sleep without this fall. Some time after midnight, growing restive, torn, continuous pain, I moved back to the log house bank. This had been taken as a hospital, all night wounded men being brought in, wound rest, leg or an arm amputated, case might require, and everything done to save life or suffering. Sight was unendurable. I returned to the tree, and across the way, one Confederate officer was not content to wait for the next day. During the night, Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest disguised his men, captured Federal holders, and moved forward on the Union left to reconnoiter. Saw, chilled in bones, saw fuels unloading in great number on the west bank. That information he raced to find Beauregard, but was unable to do so. Instead, he found Corps commanders William Hardy and Braxton Bragg, both yes, fort. Forrest was so angry that one of his aides said, so mad he stunk. Both he spat out, we will be whipped like hell tomorrow. Despite the rain that night, Southern discipline seemed here. Southern history and Edward Pollard tried. With the exception of a few thousand disciplined troops, the whole generated bands of roving plunderers, toxic victory, and scattered in a shameful, rich spoil battlefield. All during the night, thousands out in quest of plunder. Hundreds intoxicating wine, liquor found, and seen ordering shouts of revelry arose round the large fires, kindled, mingled, burned. The next day, Monday, April 7th, Beauregard and his army began the day with what they believed pop-up attacks. Found there was an unanticipated strength in the Union line. About 6 o'clock, a hot fire of musket artillery opened the enemy's 1 hour advance. Short junction of person. Soon the battle rage satisfied me. I was attacked by a largely superior force. From the onset, our troops, notwithstanding fatigue and losses in the battle of the day before, exhibited the most cheering, veteran-like steadiness. Enemy constantly reinforced. Our ranks were set thin, easy with fire, and that Union strength flexed its muscle the rest of the day. Grant's simple orders for the day were to advance, capture our original camps. The 7 divisions of 45,000 men and between 25,000 around 8 camps. Grant and Hill find attack and to try tactics, psychological, outlandish attacks, back over the same ground in 7 states. After got nightmarish. One captain. Our regiment rode on time. Oxygen. Such a moment. God save country. I saw one arm raised second. Now there's a rep.
I'm not sure what they're doing. That's fucked up. I didn't know when it was. Look at that.
Red.
They are the worst fucking kids I've ever
Now,
known.
finish.
Oh, they're yours.
Raised. Ass.
They have no.
The live one. On them all that world was long.
Buddy,
Said to me, give me some water. Send me a
They
surgeon.
have
Won't you
no.
go? Have virus.
I don't care.
There was definitely no form mutilation. The home used to fence, fight, they did this. For years, one day, I learned to be among the I am describing without any connection. The reinforced federal push, also pressure telling by mid-afternoon, Beauregard had embraced reality, having General Thomas Jordan involved. Our losses were quelling perilous, straggling and going more than train. A little after 2 o'clock, Governor Isham G. Harris, Tennessee, taking me aside, asked, "Not danger, Harry, you live long, feel and to be unable to go on for the work." Having an opportunity a moment later to meet General Beauregard in private, I brought the subject before him. At home, I think our troops are very much condition of a lump of sugar, thoroughly cooked with water, but yet preserving its original shape so that it follow. Would it not be judicious to get away with what we have? Indeed, Beauregard made full order himself instantly. Officers of my staff are attached to necessary orders to take the death.
Yeah.
Covered with dead that it would have been possible to walk across in any direction, stepping on dead bodies without a foot touching the ground. Walking about the carnage was a brigadier general in charge of the 20th Brigade and the 6th Division. Future President of the United States, James A. Garfield, wrote to his wife, "The horrible sights that I have witnessed on the field I can never describe. No blaze, glory, flashes around the magnificent triumph of the war that atone for the unwritten and unutterable horror of carnage." After 2 days of fighting,
Yeah, I'm sure you did. The other day.
1700
Jack, I didn't know you so. Yeah, that's, I thought that was a woman driving that.
85 captured.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, they can't. Right here.
Johnston and
Turns out it's you. I thought it was a woman there. Or does it look like you?
1728, 8,012, 959 either captured, missing, total of
I came over there.
10,000 casualties.
But that was you.
Together, they 20,746 casualties. More than the War for Independence, War of 1812, the Mexican War of Followed. In April of 1860, 2 days of bloodletting. Whitelaw Reid, adding his death, summed it up. All troops, 5 race. The camps were regained.
Yeah.
The rebels
I met Tilly did yesterday.
attacked and failed.
But
We stood.
do you get discounts on
began.
fresh boxes?
So in
Just wondering.
So the
How many boxes of
Confederates
cereal I've got in
were
there?
commanding made worse.
Well, after you give a discount. Every box I've got is fresh. Like cans I get are standard. You get discounts on that? But there's a lot of stores don't use it. But
Horrible night.
the store is getting worse.
That April I saw more of human agony, foe that I trust I could never again fall on. Treating posts wound along a narrow, almost impassable road. Here was a long line of wagons loaded with piled in and bags of vein, frozen, person, of a mule sponged on in mud and water. Next came a straggling regiment of infantry, pressing on past the train of wagons, and a stretcher, shoulder, foreman, carrying officers. Then soldiers, staggering along, with an arm broken, hanging down, other fearful. To add to the horrors, the elements of heaven, martial, cold, rain, about nightfall. Soon, harder
Jack
and
and
faster. Burned
Jack's grown.
blinding air. I passed long wagon
He's bigger than he was.
filled with night, without even a blanket to chew.
Not in very good shape
Some three died. That awful retreat.
for his age.
Some
Could be in better shape.
760 miles
But,
east in Richmond, southern capital. Fight Beauregard's claim victory. Eventually true. It began to sneak in. The Confederacy, ominous reality. The Confederate Army had not reclaimed.
Not in very good shape.
It
He
had
never
not
shirt on.
reclaimed.
But never had fun.
Balance
My
of
wife
power
used to go.
in the West, not the school. Takes the military advisors from
He was just stubbing her mouth.
counties, familiar, in the Mississippi Valley.
Oh, this is radio. Just said, don't have any curse.
Even in a after the fight, and shook. First
You
line,
have something on the floor.
on the sheet. Telegram claiming victory. Or and even the battered victory did not escape. William Sherman, attacked by soldiers, millions of fight. Why, after so many warnings, they continued to ignore the possibility that Confederates might be in the area.
Yeah, I'm not doing your kids. That's the way I look at it. Go to the Wagoneer. It was turned out. Every time I see it 8 times. And I mean, look at it. It's like a woman in it. It's like a woman in it. What's that? And Jack shot a bit. He's bigger than he was. Not very good shape, though. Bobby,
Was an effort to save
the
any
hot girl.
consuming and important matter.
You see this like that.
Commander U.S. Grant. Western governors said
They're never doing that.
pictures of their state
Wandering around
wanted
there.
to know why he had been surprised in China. Why had he made no necessary reconnaissance on soldiers?
He was just eating barbecue chips.
Many call for
Stuff here now. Skunky with an apple. Correct. They have a juice. Yeah, but too. Jack. Jack's a little bit bigger than he is. It's flabby as hell. I think your son said he'd be in better shape. Let's bring still got baby fat. You got a lot of dudes now. Maybe.
gallant effort to regain what had been lost, then indeed, I gave up all I did, stating that I completed my work. Chilling. One that 2 years later,
Yeah, Miss Jack and
down like Atlanta,
they went.
Georgia, Shenandoah Valley,
Jack Roland, he's bigger than anyone.
Carolinas.
Oh,
Again,
Bobby,
Robert
he's
E.
very good shape.
Cecil.
Not
The
physically very
Mississippi
good.
Valley.
Well, he does.
Shiloh shot from that side. And down in Dixie,
I was like, he's blind.
with George Washington. Probably best captured the lighting around Pittsburgh landing truly intense.
No matter how much he fought,
After
he had
Shiloh
to fight it with a big fight.
never smiled. Next gathered, tell the story of a momentous flash. The Flash of Titans. Robert E. Lee
You've been there.
and U.S. Grant.
I watched you.
We'll take you to Central
You got in your
Virginia.
Muhammad Ali stance. Hands down low. All he could get away with. And it was fast. Man, you know, you watch those films.
Red
And
Kite.
I don't know how he did it. You would see his punch coming. He just couldn't move his body, just and the punch would take instant.
It was April of 18. War was just about to enter its second year. The beginning of that year had been a big one. Better seen. February, Fort Henry, Roanoke Island, North Carolina, Fort Donelson all fell. Now there were invasion routes in the old North State, Interior, Tennessee, in the very heartland of the Confederacy. In the first week of March, Missouri was, for all practical purposes, lost to the Confederacy thanks to victory at Peach Ridge. East, more cause for Southern. The ironclad USS Monitor had revolutionized naval warfare and neutralized Confederacy ESS. And George B. McClellan finally served from land 151,000 men on the Virginia Peninsula.
Yeah, Mitch Hoover.
So there had been all these
Jack, I'm not sure there's a lot of Sophie. Sophie?
we believe
Yeah.
in the Southern
Yeah.
California.
Jack's filming him. He's bigger than he used to. But he's not in very good shape.
Carolina declared that he
Not a flap. Well, he got a thing. Gotta be time.
Many confused Uncle Kenny.
Sit out front.
Three more streams
Yeah,
of
they
bad
kinda-
luck. He seen a post light as
It looked
one
like it
door.
was.
How profoundly
I can't see in the truck.
ran.
I can see you, but she's back in. See whoever's driving right there. Everything looks like you.
Egan Flagg, Andrew Foote, Henry and Donaldson, Dennis Abraham Lincoln, his first major victory. Yes. Lloyd Anderson. Only 4 days after the news of Donaldson's fall, Tom Foote died at 5:30 in the morning of February 10th. What you believe? Michael. Yes. The war rolled on. Mr. Lincoln wanted to press his Western advantage. Indeed, by early April, Jefferson Davis and his Confederate forces in the West were reeling. Mentioned earlier, Johnston's army had fallen back and concentrated at Corinth. Town held strategic importance. There, the Mobile and Ohio Railroad and north to south, and the Memphis and Charleston Railroad ran west, both backbone Confederacy, who had muscled Johnston. Confederate troops were called in from Memphis, Mobile, Pensacola, and New Orleans. Regardless, an undaunted and confident U.S. Grant bided his time, waited for you, and once united planned to make a drive on point. The army sprawled across the rolling landscape
That's
of
bigger.
Pittsburgh Landing. A steamboat docking
Bobby.
waiting name and
Not very good shape.
that had small
I'm really surprised at you.
from it.
You know, your stuff.
On the landing, the top bluffs,
So,
100 feet from the river, several captains camped around and about them, ran 6 divisions, total 39,830 men officers. 3.5 of them had seen action in Thomas. Some concern about the enemy had not entrenched. In outposts had been Commander was confident in victory that in a recent lesson flight ran west. Session about on its last leg. Big fight appears to me will be the last best. So the army staff waiting for 5,005. Not far away, Methodist called Shiloh. In places. Yet Albert Sidney Johnston decided to make the area a place of bloody confrontation. Quite honestly, he had. Coming engagement plan was critical. Confederacy. 1, 2 railroads that ran through Corinth were vital, had expected. And 2, he knew that central and western Tennessee and the Cumberland Gap area in eastern Tennessee and Kentucky had been states. And the military area was Iowa Brigadier General William years old. Was not a West Point. Did serve in the Mexican volunteer. Donaldson commanded a brigade and did so promoted to again. Early in March, he wrote his wife Anne to let her know that he had been quite ill. Hey. In that same letter, he expressed how much he wanted the war, how much he missed her and his children. The message touched him. So, this is the advice of friends and relatives. And without informing her husband, she headed south. Grant's 5th Division, under recently resurrected Brigadier General William Sherman, now 42 years of age. He, back in 1859, had been superintendent of Louisiana State Seminary of Learning and Military Academy, LSU. When Civil War came, he capably commanded a brigade at First Bull Run. Soon thereafter found himself in Kentucky, when he was asked to keep the state within the home. There, great stress and strain waged soldiers, buildings alike. Soldiers, Major General Don Carl Buell Roach, but in St. Louis, Henry Allington Sherman under his wing, always still. At Pittsburgh Landing, his 5th Division was camped on the extreme southern perimeter, where it and he sort tested. Grant's last division, the 6th, was under Brigadier General Benjamin Mayberry Prentice, weighed 240 pounds, and his ancestry stretched back to a passenger aboard the Mayflower, born in what is now West Virginia. He, young man, West. He served in the Mexican War and afterwards became an attorney and was a Republican candidate for Congress in 60 elections. Following April, he was named a colonel in Illinois. 4 months later, he was made a brigadier general of volunteers. Yes, another political general. There were many who criticized any do so after his performance in the battle. Buell's central addition, there would be 9 federal divisions, and like the majority of Johnston's Confederate force, 5.5 of the divisions were untested, unprepared combat. It is important to repeat the situation. Grant's army was sprawled across the rolling land on the west bank of the Tennessee, scattered and with semblance of a defensive line, no entrenchments and flat provisions.
Yeah, like, what a fucking climbing that wagoneer.
And their commander's headquarters, 9 miles downstream and on the opposite bank.
God.
Yes, common soldier. Few, if any, officers showed God. So they followed their lead. Relaxed, mild, feathered. It all seemed so simple. Wait for people once. 1 mile south of Corinth, 50 miles at disappeared. That's it all. Here, that's west. Yes, the word did not share the thing. One was Colonel Jesse Atkinson, Colonel of the 3rd Battalion, who warned Sherman on April the 5th and able to just south of the launch that was Johnston would not have asked to wait for two federal armies tonight. He was going to strike first. April the 3rd, he issued general orders that included soldiers of the Army of the Mississippi put you in motion to offer battle to the invaders of the country. You can but march to decisive victory over mercenaries sent to subjugate and spoil you, liberty, property, and honor. Remember the precious stake involved. Remember the dependence of your mothers, wives, sisters, and your children on the result. Remember the fair, broad, abounding land. The happy home will be desolated by your defeat. The eyes and hopes of a million people rest on you. With that powerful intrigue, his army forward, evil forward. As much as officers tried to make it orderly, anything but unruly, loud. So much so that Johnston's second in command, Beauregard, wanted to call the whole attack off. Despite this advance, despite circumstances that most of his army was green and was moving through unfamiliar terrain, lacked efficient transportation, suffered from lack of supplies, organization, and discipline. Johnston asserted, I would attack them if they were a million. The night of the 5th, frustrated and concerned Beauregard heard from. He sent an orderly to cipher the voice. The orderly returned, told him Trump not in the Confederate camp, but within the Union. Beauregard worried the enemy had to know of their presence. Incredibly, it more wrong. On the morning of Sunday, April the 6th, Johnston mounted his maid fed horse tired, blamed to those around. Tonight, water our horse, Tennessee. A very short distance away, than the unsuspecting camp many left. Others, their messes, their breakfast. Only yards away, literally, some 40,000 ready to purge their homeland of an invading enemy. The few suspected disaster. One of them was a 31-year-old graduate of Harvard, Colonel Body. Outspoken but liked by his men, he commanded Sherman's 1st Brigade. He had a premonition 5 days. Sure enough, instead of a tidal wave about to roll, he would be one of the first. For tens of thousands of soldiers, the first hint that something was wrong, this. There was a general stirring south. Then suddenly every animal and beast raced northward, across fields, into, through the encampment.
Guy's bigger.
Dancing Confederates. To the stampede, befuddled amusement. Then it melted into absolute sheer horror. The wall of butter gray exploded into
something I didn't expect.
Clear sky. Johnston's army had achieved surprise. Now they came on like a tidal wave in linear formation. Each of the 3 corps stacked one by one behind one another. All but Johnston's thirds packed. Yet despite the human avalanche, only 4 of the Confederate brigades hit the Union left. It was anchored at the Tennessee River. Johnston wanted to drive the federal force away from the river, cut them off from avenues of retreat and reinforcement. Yet it seems that Beauregard wrote up the battle plan felt differently. Meanwhile, 10 miles downstream, which seemed a spattering of fire, now amplified into a dull, continuous roar. Grant, nursing a painful, swollen, acquired 2 days earlier in a horseback accident, noted, while I was at breakfast, heavy firing was heard in the direction of Pittsburgh Landing, and I sent a hurried note to Buell informing him of the reason why I could not meet at Savannah. On the way up the river, I directed the dispatch boat run in close to Crump's Landing so that I could communicate with General Lew Wallace. Found him waiting on a boat, apparently expecting to see me, and I directed him to get his troops in line, ready to execute any orders he might receive. Why, that his troops were already under arms, prepared. By the time Grant arrived on the field, he found his army pressed all along its front, some 2 miles. Some men had broken. Some had fled the battlefield, sought the security of bluffs along the river. Well, the now full-blown battle special corps correspondent Junius Henry Brown of the New York Tribune wrote, "Hotter and hotter grew the content. Light of the sun was obscured by the clouds of sulphurous smoke. The ground became moist and slippery, humid. Men glared at each other as at wild beasts. And when a shell burst with fatal effect among a crowd of the advancing foe, and arms, legs, and heads torn off, a grim smile of pleasure lighted up the smoke's begrimed faces. The transformed beasts witnessed catastrophe. Men with knitted brows and flushed cheeks fought madly over ridges, along ravines, up steep descents with blood and perspiration streaming down their faces. Everywhere was mad excitement. Everywhere was horror. Commanders galloped wildly in front of their regiments, cheered them on, urging spirited steeds wherever the troops were falling back, careless of their own life, as if they had a million souls to spare. Those surprised men from Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois, men with musket and artillery fire, closed and made a stand. They stopped the initial advance and forced the Confederates to fall back with heavy losses. That scenario would be all day. Confederate attacks came, but they were thrown in. What success those attacks did have actually created an advantage. Southern attacks on both flanks of the force compressed the line. The Federal line was bent back on both its center, increased in depth and number, and refused to give way. Vortex of the fighting, Grant's 6th Division under Benjamin Prentiss, and elements of the 2nd and 4th Divisions, some 4,100 survivors who hunkered down in a 1/2 mile long so-called sunken road, made a stand. Somewhere in the midst of that lead-laced hell, Colonel Isaac Hughes, the 41st Illinois Felon. Men, fill your canteens. Some of you ill before night. Grant recapped the crisis, told how fortunate in his army was. Good fortune graced one of his division commanders. It was a case of Southern dash against Northern pluck and endurance. I was continuously engaged, passing from one part of the field to another, giving directions to division commanders. Thus, moving along the line, however, I never deemed it important to stay long with Sherman. He inspired a confidence in officers and men that enabled them to render services on that bloody battlefield worthy of casual Sherman that would have been from the people that day in a sad age of childhood. How near we came. Sherman was shot twice, once in the hand, once in the shoulder, ball cutting both making life, and a third ball passed through the hat. In addition to this, and several persons shot during the day. Hiding in this general area was so desperate that it would forever be known as the Hornet. Bleeding, like chaos. A wounded Union soldier was told to go to the rear. He did, but returned. Asked why he started. "Give me a gun, Captain. This fight ain't got no." All around the universe. Many of these men, north and south, volunteered in 1881, expecting to revel in glory. Little glory that here, or here, snapshot, they were best alive. Attesting to the hail of lead, one general was found, shot 7 times. Grant's 2nd Division Commander W.H.L. Wallace, wife on the way, horribly. Bullet struck him behind his left, exited out his left eye socket. A Union drummer boy in the 1830s
Yeah, I met,
in great pain,
Jack
tested for treating. Federal chaplain pushing the boys tested back inside. Told him to have faith in the Lord.
Jack bigger than you. Keep going.
One unnamed Union captain recalled this unforgettable.
Right.
I saw an
Not in very good shape, though.
man, old diet.
Surprising.
He was
I
holding
don't know
up
where his black hair.
both his hands. They expressed belonging, apprehension, value. After our regiment was nearly annihilated, and we were compelled to retreat under the galling fire, we saw a boy putting his dying brother on arm, trying to drag him to dancing Confederates. He looked at me imploringly. Captain, help him, won't you? Do, Captain, he'll live. I said, shut him. You see, he's dying now. Oh, no, he ain't, Captain. Don't leave him. I just wished to reply. Rebels walked down in Congo, and I also. Then the Russian bullets, yells from me, hurried me away, leaving the young soldier, dying brother. Earlier I mentioned Confederate missile attacks. This portion of the battle Union Center, the Sunken Road, Hornet. On 18,000 Confederates made 10 documented charges throughout the day, but never more than 3,700 attack. Charging across open allowed unobstructed federal fire, and one area that did offer some cover, so thick it broke up Confederate formations. That's why 4,300 soldiers various command. Bunkered down behind a slightly sunken road, broke wave after wave attacks. Here, assessment of Bragg's chief, Colonel Samuel H. Plackett. I witnessed various bloody and unsuccessful attacks on the Hornets. During one of the dreadful repulses, our forces, General Bragg directed me to ride forward. Central Regiment, brigade of troops that was recoiling across an open field, and to take its colors and carry them forward. The flag must not go back again. Dashed to the line of battle, seized the colors from the retreating color bearer, said to him, General Bragg says these colors must not go to the rear. I was talking to the colored sergeant was shot down. A moment or two afterward, I was almost alone with horseback in the open field. The two lines of battle. Officer, Colonel H.W. Allen, later to become governor of Indiana, came up to me with a bullet hole in each cheek, blood streaming mouth, and asked, What are you doing with my colors, sir? I am obeying General Bragg's orders to hold them where they are. Let me have them. Any man but my color bearer carries these colors. I am the man. And tell General Bragg I will see colors are in the right place. Must attack this flank. Never carry it alone in front. The stubbornness of the Federal Center even compelled the Confederate commander to arrive on Albert Johnston rode dangerously forward. For the 9th Arkansas in Tennessee, he and they are stubborn, must use bayonet. Then he moved to the center of their battle line and caught up his movement, exclaimed, I will lead you. Incredible. Commanding officer of the Confederate Army of the Mississippi led an attack on horseback. Stern, believing he had made the effort without consequence, that would not be. It was about 2 o'clock afternoon. Johnston A. noted great concern. General now had grown pale. Really battle. Right. General, are you wounded? Johnston replied, yes. And I fear seriously. It's just above the hollow of your right, a major artery. Losing so much blood. Still. Paul went out to find his personal surgeon, Dr. D. W. Andell, but he was away attending to all that was required for him. No one on the scene knew what to do. So, about 2:30 after the 6:18,
Yeah, maybe.
commander of Federal
Maybe just
Division
shoot
of the
through your
Mississippi,
shoulder.
Albert
Okay.
Sidney Jones.
I'm sitting going, who the fuck is that?
Aides now tried to locate G. Warrior, now in command, and who had recently been suffering from a throat infection, also from bronchitis. It took time to locate. He had been in the rear, pummeling in units. While men searched for him, Confederate attacks continued unsuccessfully, hammered stubborn Federal citizens. Then, about 4:30 p.m., 52-year-old Confederate Brigadier General Daniel Ruggles, interesting Massachusetts native, called for 62 cannon, 62 guns, manned 1/5 of a mile. Then, the largest concentration of artillery in the Western.
Who the fuck is that with that wagon? I saw it, I had to go.
At the barrage.
I came back and I'm like, oh, that wagon is there. I want to go. Because every time I saw it, I was thinking, oh, God, bloody time. It didn't look like you, but it looked like you were walking. Who the fuck is that? And, who is in that car? Yeah. Jack's bigger than me. But he's on pretty good stage.
By the 3rd Highway. As they did, Gare was still smoking in the black
You're good shape. You don't look like you. Flabby like that.
80 orders into the ground. Found the enemy their muscle action. Waited to fire a volley and ordered it to repeat and forward. The lost but tore into the huge line, and with his right crest, huge men had to fall back.
I guess that's why he had Gary shot.
That, along with Confederate attacks on other Rangers right, meant that around 5:30 that afternoon, summer entered around silence after hours of turning fence. Benjamin Prentiss rendered some 2,200 men. For the Confederates, costly victory dragged Colonel S.H. Lockett. There was a near triumph for us here with many soldiers lost first attacks, but still nearer on account of valuable time it cost day passed. The time consumed in gathering Prentiss's command together, taking arms, and marching in rear was incredibly valuable. Not only that, news of the capture spread and grew as it. Many soldiers and officers believed we had captured all the Federal Army. Hundreds left their positions, came to see captured Yanks. With little sunlight left, Oregon around 6 p.m. suspended Confederate activity today. It had been a bloody White Law Reed, reporter from Cincinnati Gazette, says today. We have lost nearly all our camps, camp equipment, lost nearly half our field artillery. We've lost a general and 2 or 3 regiments, soldiers, prisoners. We've lost threatened, killed, hospital full of bullets, and our men are discouraged by prolonged heat. Nothing but the most energetic exertion part of the officers prevents them from becoming demoralized. There was one Union officer who was not. That was U.S. Grant, who, rear at the landing, put together a formidable mass stand. That evening, across the bay, flushed but he truly believed in incredible awesome success. Beauregard sent a victory telegram to Richmond, then bedded down Sherman's 7th Paper Corps. However, usual happening back in the landing was unable. One exhausted soldier who was near the river, Private Gander Stillwell, 1st Illinois, noted. As we were lying there, I heard the train partial fall back. I slipped out of the rank, walked out to the side of the road to see what troops. The man was playing Dixie Land. Marching quick step. I saw that they had not been in a fight, for there was no powders on his face. What regiment is it? Asked a sergeant marching flank. Back came the answer in quick, cheery tone. The 36th Indiana, Advance Guard of Fuel Army. Gave one big gasp and followed. The blood pumped in the veins of my throat and my heart fairly pounded against my little gifted jacket. Indeed, around 5 to 6 p.m., about the time Benjamin Prentiss surrendered his forces center, Don Carlos Bull's 5,000 man army of the Ohio began to arrive across the river West Bank. Timing of its arrival not better. I brought to the closers. It had been a most unholy Sabbath. Colonel Will DeHaas noted. The Sabbath closed, which had no parallel. Night fell, spread fury wall. Fields of blood, death, felt unrestrained.
Well, that's
soon after dark, the rain points.
About 60.
Very hours that might read.
Friday is 31.
Dying, lava, thunder, gunboats down in the river. As they heavy missiles government mines came swelling.
Still a good shit. You're on it. Possibly they don't lie.
Suffered enough spike shoulder. The night it rained terribly. Finding Grant in his driving deluge that fell that night. Sherman Richmond. That devil's own day, hadn't it? Man answered. Yes, wake up tomorrow. So optimistic the Union commander had, but this night. I made my headquarters under a tree 100 yards after. My ankle was so much open, bruised, so painful, I just get no best. The drenching rain...
The most beautiful ever. Yeah, that's all. They won't see.
Some time after going rested, born.
Oh, she said
pain. I moved back to the log house to lake. This had been taken in the hospital.
Yeah, you're like
all
years
they
old.
put in being brought in. Yeah. Leg, arm,
Oh, it's
case might require.
Oh,
And everything
I've been
done
calling
in
you.
life. But
Your child on
vital.
face. How long was you
Retreat. Across the way was the federal officer, not content to wait for the next day. During the night, Colonel Nathan sent a report disguised his captured federal host and moved forward on his left reconnoiter. Hardy and Braxton Bragg both missed Fort. Forrest was so angry that one of his aides said, so mad he's thunder. Both he spat out, we will be whipped like hell tomorrow. Like the rain that night, Southern discipline seemed here. Southern historian Edward Pollard described. With the exception of a few thousand disciplined troops, the whole army generated bands of roving plunder, intoxicated with victory, and scattered in a shameful hunt for rich spoil battlefield. All during the night, thousands out in quest of plunder. Hundreds intoxicated with wine, liquor found, and scenes of disorder and shouts of revelry arose round the large fires kindled, mingled. The next day, Monday, April 7th, Beauregard and his army began the day with what they believed to be pop-up attacks. Found there was an unanticipated strength in the Union line. About 6 o'clock, a hot fire of musketry, artillery, opened from the enemy's quarter on our advanced line, assured me junction versus. Soon the battle raged with which satisfied me. I was attacked by a largely superior force. From the onset, our troops, notwithstanding fatigue and losses of the battle of the day before, exhibited the most cheering, veteran-like steadiness. Again and again, our troops were brought to the charge, invariably drive back their foe, but opposed to an enemy constantly reinforced, our ranks were perceptibly thin, ceasing, withering fire. And that Union strength flexed its muscles the rest of the day. Grant's simple orders for the day were to advance and recapture our original camps. So, 7 divisions, some 45,000 men, hit 20 to 25,000 around 8 a.m. Soon, Grant and Buell's combined attacks began to drive the tactically, psychologically outmanned Confederates back over the same ground that had been tested the day before. That presented a never-forgotten nightmarish image. One unnamed captain, dying dead, had an opportunity to notice incidents about Ho, friend, ho! God's sake, come here! I'll dead, but arm raised, empty. Following his head on the dead body of a comrade. Both were red, dead foot. Dead men gushed out in a grayish mass face. The live one calls him all that horrible long night alone. The thing he said to me was, give me some water.
There was good.
Won't you? Oh, God, need you now to fight us.
Three and a half. You don't like it.
Saw himself and holding the hand.
Only had one problem.
Later, I ate my cup in 6 cases of rebel
Problem. The problem is, leave her up there.
I saw 5 dead rebels and knocked off by round shot. Myself,
Most of them. You like,
taking me aside as my danger, very long field and unable to withdraw any order. Having an opportunity a moment later to speak to General Beauregard in private, I brought the subject before him. General, I think our troops are very much in the condition of a lump of sugar, thoroughly soaked with water, but yet preserving its original shape, so ready to fall. Would it not be judicious to get away with what we have? Indeed, Beauregard made the only order he felt he could make. Officers of my staff dispatched with the necessary orders to make the best disposition for a delivery, orderly withdrawal, and to collect and push the reserve to meet the enemy should he attempt to push after them. And so around 2:30, orders to disengage. Given the incredible number of Union casualties, there was no concentrated, vigorous Union pursuit the next morning. Back to the bloody battlefield, U.S. Grant violence the last 2 days. I saw an open field over which the Confederates had made the charges being performed, so covered with dead that it would have been possible to walk across in any direction, stepping on dead bodies without a foot touching the ground. Walking about the carnage was a brigadier general in charge of the 20th Brigade and 6th Division. Future President of the United States, James A. Garfield, wrote to his wife. The horrible sights that I had witnessed on the field I can never describe. No blaze, glory, flashes around the magnificent triumphs of the war and atone for the unwritten, venerable horror. Carnage. After 2 days of fighting, lost staggering. 1,754 killed. 8,400. 805 captured. 1,000. Constant and Beauregard Confederate force lost 43,000. Beauregard's claim of victory, essentially the truth, begins in hand. The Confederacy, ominous reality. The Confederate Army had not reclaimed boundaries. It had not reclaimed innocence. Balance of power in the West was not restored. Davis's military advisor, Robert Lee, counseled earlier that if the Mississippi Valley was lost, Atlantic States prophetic over valley. And there were consequences for individuals after the fight had Shiloh. The first time in his Civil War career, E.G.T. Beauregard's reputation tarnished. His telegram claiming victory in the target popular criticism, even ridicule. And even the battered victors could not escape. William Sherman was attacked by soldier and civilian alike. Why, after so many warnings, did he continue to ignore the possibility Johnston's Confederates might be in the area, might just attack? A few years later, with the Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War, Sherman was questioned, asked to discuss it. He passed hurriedly experiences included his role at front in Kentucky, Nuclear, and Shiloh. Instead, he rushed to discuss in detail the drive on Atlanta. Explained his rushing over the earlier, was an effort to save the committee from, as he put it, consuming an inordinate amount of time. Commander U.S. Grant was grilled like more. Western governors who read the casualty list of constituents from their states wanted to know why he had been surprised at Shiloh. Why had he made no effort to do reconnaissance? Lone soldier, innocent character. Many call the whole affair one to blunder. Action coming short of criminal terrorism. Department Commander Major General Henry Halleck arrived on the field April the 11th and assumed command. One that would bear fruit later. Shiloh, despite its horrendous casualties, a Union victory. Southern forces retreated. Union forces held the field and strategic advantage. And that strategic advantage improved almost immediately when word came with the fall of Island Number 10 on the Mississippi. Of the Shiloh still fighting. That one more concept, one that Shiloh. One from a man capable of equally determined intensity. All can formulate equal measures of intensity. But more quiet. You as France up to the Battle of Shiloh, I, as well as thousands, believe the rebellion government would collapse suddenly, soon, ISIS victory gained any of its army. Donaldson and Henry were such victories. But when shortly afterwards, Confederate armies were collected, not only attempted to hold the line farther south, but assumed the offensive and made such a gallant effort to regain what had been lost, that indeed, I gave up all I did, saving except my children. 1 to 2 years later, destruction subsequent down like Atlanta,
James Dean wasn't just a movie star. He was a living explosion. The way he moved, the way he smoked a cigarette, the way he stared into the camera, just daring the world to think it. He embodied rebellion, sensuality, danger all at once. To Hollywood, he was an icon. To Sal Mineo, he was the first love, the kind that carves scars never heal. Their story began on the set of Rebel Without a Cause. To the public, they were perfect co-stars. Behind closed doors, they were already boundary. Nights spent at the Beverly Hills Hotel, stolen hours for James whispered in Sal's ear. If I die, burn every reel we ever shot. No one can ever see them. Why would a man at the peak of his fame speak like that? Because James Dean knew Hollywood could kill you with a single headline. Then came the threat. A note written in pig's blood shoved into his dressing room. Choose your career or your little boyfriend. James panicked. For 3 weeks he vanished from Sal's life, cutting him off to protect them both. Sal didn't let go. He stood outside the set of Giant Baking under the California sun, just to tell him, if you run away, I will die. 3 weeks later, James was gone. Officially, it was a car crash, but a mechanic whispered years later the brakes on James's Porsche had been tampered with, and for his silence, he was paid off, threatened. Secret died with him, buried under money, fear. Sal carried the ghost. He stuffed rags into door cracks at night, terrified of hidden cameras. He called NBC at midnight crying, "Have James Dean's tape, we can't keep it anymore." Station hung up. 2 weeks later, the NBC office mysteriously burned down, and every record of his fall disappeared. Dean's death wasn't just the loss of a lover. It was proof of how far Hollywood could go to protect its image. And for Sal Mineo, it was the moment his life turned into a nightmare he could never go from. Number 3. Anthony Perkins, master of silence. Anthony Perkins was Hollywood's chameleon. On screen, he became Norman Bates in Psycho, embodying madness that's so convincingly that America never forgot it. Off-screen, Perkins lived a double life carved out of fear. The studios whispered about his hidden affairs, late nights with cab hunters, discreet encounters that could never see daylight. Into this cage of secrecy stepped Sal Mineo, fragile, searching for something different. They crossed paths at parties, exchanged glances, too quick to linger. Soon they disappeared into hotel suites where curtains stayed closed, gone. Sal, wounded by past betrayal, craved a love that he could hold on to. Perkins, however, knew only survival. For him, intimate meant control. Control meant silence. Sal wanted recognition. Perkins wanted erasure. The more Sal opened his heart, the more Perkins hid behind walls of denial. Years later, when asked about Sal at a Palm Springs gala, Perkins didn't lie, didn't confess. He simply stood up and walked out. In Hollywood, sometimes silence wounds deeper than rejection. For Sal, that silence became another scar that even love could turn into. War. Brandon DeWilde, The Vanishing Golden. Brandon DeWilde was once America's darling, the child star who became the fresh-faced promise of new generations. But growing up in Hollywood was its own kind of curse. By the 1960s, Brandon was struggling to stay relevant, his career drifting into the shadows. That's when his name quietly tanked Sal Mineo. One night in 1965, Hotel Records revealed room 508, Beverly Hills, ordered 3 dinners for Sal Mineo. Witnesses claimed they saw 3 men leave separately minutes apart. Movie Land's presidential incident, 301, Psycho 1, Rebel Order of Hollywood reporter lined up an interview with Val. Desperate